I sacrificed everything for your future John, but you left me for a rich woman.
In the small town of Intanta, where red dust settled on everything and dreams seemed as distant as the city lights, there lived a young woman named Stella. Every morning, before the sun painted the sky orange, she would balance a large calabash of fresh palm wine on her head and walk through the narrow streets, calling out to her customers. "Fresh palm wine! Sweet palm wine!" Her voice rang out melodiously, cutting through the morning silence. Stella was 22, with hands that told stories of hard work and eyes that sparkled with hope despite everything. Her clothes were simple, sometimes patched, always clean, but she carried herself with a dignity that money couldn't buy. On this particular morning, as she made her rounds, she counted the crumpled naira notes in her small purse. 500, 800, 1,200. Every single coin mattered because it wasn't just for her. It was for him. For John. John was a 24-year-old man learning carpentry under Oga Peter, the town's most skilled furniture maker. He was tall but thin, the kind of thin that comes from eating once a day and sometimes not at all. His clothes hung loose on his frame, but his eyes burned with an ambition that seemed too big for his small circumstances. "John, your hands still dey shake," Oga Peter scolded as John tried to join two pieces of wood. "How you want make fine furniture like this? If you no serious, go find something else to do." John's stomach chose that moment to growl loudly, a sound that echoed in the small workshop. He hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, but he gritted his teeth and continued working. Dreams, he had learned, required sacrifice. That evening, as the sun set behind the zinc roofs of Intanta, Stella appeared at John's tiny room with a small pot of gari and vegetable soup. The room was barely large enough for a mat and a small wooden box that held all of John's possessions. "I sold 15 bottles today," she announced with a smile, settling beside him on the mat. "Business was good. Here, eat." John looked at the food, then at Stella. He knew this routine. She would bring food and claim she had already eaten, but he could see the hunger in her eyes, the slight hollowness in her cheeks. "Stella, this na your food. You need chop too." "I don't eat already," she lied smoothly, watching as he reluctantly took the spoon. The truth was that she had given him her only meal of the day, again. As John ate, Stella told him about her day, the difficult customers, the woman who tried to cheat her, the old man who bought palm wine every day and always asked about John. She made everything sound like an adventure, even though John knew how hard her life was. "Why you they do all this for me?" John asked suddenly, the question that had been burning in his heart for 3 years. Stella smiled, that radiant smile that made everything seem possible. "Because I see something special in you, something way other people no see yet. But I see 'em." 3 years earlier, Stella had found John sleeping under the old bridge that connected Intanta to the next village. He was 21 then, freshly orphaned, with nothing but the clothes on his back and dreams that seemed impossible. His parents had died in a car accident, leaving him with debts he couldn't pay and a future that looked as dark as the nights he spent on the streets. That's when Stella, then 19 and working as a housegirl for a wealthy woman in town, found him. "You no get family?" she had asked, offering him bread she had stolen from her employer's kitchen. "Nobody," John had replied, his pride fighting with his hunger. "Then I go be your family." And she meant it. Stella left her job as a housegirl, a steady income in a town where jobs were scarce, and started selling palm wine so she could help John. She used her small savings to rent the tiny room where John now lived, and she made sure he never went to bed hungry, even if it meant she did. When John decided he wanted to learn carpentry, Stella supported him without question. When Oga Peter demanded apprentice fees that seemed impossible to raise, Stella worked harder, selling palm wine from dawn to dusk, saving every kobo. "When I make John would tell her on nights like this, holding her calloused hands in his, "when I become somebody important, now you I go marry first. I promise you this thing with my whole heart." Stella would smile and nod, believing every word. In her mind, they were already married. Every sacrifice she made was an investment in their future together. The day that changed everything started like any other. Oga Peter called John aside after work with news that made John's heart race. "Your apprentice fees donde overdue. If you no pay 50,000 naira by tomorrow, I go give your space to another person." 50,000 naira. It might as well have been 50 million. John walked home that evening feeling like the world was crashing down on him. 3 years of struggle, of Stella's sacrifice, and it could all end because of money he didn't have. When he told Stella, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up with a determination that surprised him. "I go find the money," she said simply. "Stella, where you want see 50,000 naira? We no get that kind money." "I say I go find trust me." For 2 days, Stella disappeared. John was frantic, asking everyone in the market, searching the streets. No one had seen her. On the second night, she returned with an envelope containing exactly 50,000 naira in crisp notes. But she was different. Quieter. There was a sadness in her eyes that she tried to hide behind her usual smile. And John noticed immediately. Her wrist was bare. The thin gold bracelet she always wore, the one her grandmother had given her before she died, was gone. "Stella, where you see this money? And where your bracelet?" "Don't ask me questions, John. Just pay your fees tomorrow." But John knew. Later that night, he went to the gold buyer's shop and confirmed his suspicions. Stella had sold her grandmother's bracelet, the only valuable thing she owned, the only connection to her family, for exactly 50,000 naira. Her inheritance, her security, everything gone for his dream. That night, as Stella slept beside him, John cried silently. He understood the depth of her love, and it both humbled and terrified him. 2 years passed. John completed his apprenticeship and slowly began to build his reputation. He started with small jobs, fixing broken chairs, making simple stools, but his work was good, and word spread. Then came the opportunity that would change his life forever. Chief Obama, the wealthiest man in 3 local governments, was building a new hotel. He needed furniture, beds, tables, wardrobes, everything. It was a contract worth 2 million naira, more money than John had ever imagined. "If you do this job well," Chief Obama told him during their first meeting, "there will be many more contracts. I have properties everywhere." Chief Obama's house was like nothing John had ever seen. Marble floors, air conditioning, servants in uniforms. It was a different world, one that spoke of power, influence, and unlimited possibilities. It was in this house that John first met Linda. Linda Obama was 26, her father's only daughter and the apple of his eye. She had studied interior design in London, spoke perfect English with a slight British accent, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never known want. "You're quite talented," she told John, examining his sample work with professional interest. "Your craftsmanship is impressive. I studied interior design in London. Perhaps we could collaborate on some projects." John was mesmerized. Here was a woman who spoke his professional language, who understood design concepts he was only beginning to learn. She was everything Stella wasn't: polished, educated, sophisticated. When she spoke, people listened. When she entered a room, she commanded attention. Meanwhile, Stella continued her routine. Every morning, she would sell palm wine. Every evening, she would come home to John with food and stories and unwavering support. She had saved 200,000 naira in a small tin box under their mattress, money for their wedding, she told him excitedly. But John was changing, and everyone could see it except Stella.
The change was gradual but unmistakable. John started buying better clothes, trading his simple shirts for more expensive ones. He began to speak differently, forcing formal English even in casual conversation. "Stella, it's I have eaten, not I don't eat," he corrected her one day in front of his new clients. Stella laughed it off, but John saw the hurt flash in her eyes. He stopped eating with his hands, insisting on forks and knives even for local food. When Stella visited his expanding workshop, He seemed embarrassed by her simple dress and village accent. "Why, you know where that blue dress I bought you?" he asked one day. "This one's still good," Stella replied, smoothing down her old but clean wrapper. "But Linda was asking about you. She won't meet you properly." The comparison was subtle but there. Linda, with her expensive clothes, her university degree, her father's connections, had become the standard by which John was measuring everything, including Stella. Linda was smart about her approach. She didn't chase John directly. Instead, she offered him bigger contracts, introduced him to influential people, and made him feel like he belonged in her world. "John, you're different from other local contractors," she told him one evening over wine, John's first time drinking wine instead of palm wine. "You have refinement. You understand quality." The praise went to John's head like alcohol. For years, he had been nobody, surviving on Stella's sacrifices and his own stubborn dreams. But Linda saw him as sophisticated, as worthy of her educated attention. Chief Obama, noticing his daughter's interest and impressed by John's work, planted a seed during one of their business meetings. "My daughter likes you, John. She's very particular about men. She turned down governor's sons, senators' nephews. But she sees something in you. You're hardworking and ambitious, and you have good character." The implications were clear. Marry Linda and John wouldn't just be a contractor, he would be family to one of the most powerful men in the region. "Think about it," Chief Obama continued. "Linda is educated, well-connected. She can help you build an empire. Together, you would be unstoppable." John left that meeting with his head spinning. An empire. Power. Respect. Everything he had ever dreamed of, handed to him on a silver platter. But there was Stella.
The betrayal and confrontation came on a Tuesday evening. John returned home to find Stella cooking his favorite meal, rice and stew with plenty of meat, a luxury she rarely afforded herself. She was humming, unusually excited about something. "John, sit down. I get something important to tell you." But John couldn't sit. He had been rehearsing this conversation for weeks, and he needed to say it before he lost his nerve. "Stella, we need to talk." Something in his tone made her stop humming. She turned from the stove, studying his face. "What's wrong?" John couldn't meet her eyes. I will marry Linda, Chief Obama daughter." The words hung in the air like smoke. Stella stood frozen, the wooden spoon still in her hand, as if she hadn't heard correctly. "What you mean?" "Linda and me, we go marry next month. Chief Obama has agreed." The wooden spoon fell from Stella's hand, clattering on the floor. She stared at John as if seeing a stranger. "John, what are you saying? We day plan our own wedding. I get money saved for Am. What do you mean you want to marry another person?" "Stella, try understand. This na opportunity. Linda will help me reach places I never dream of. She is educated and she gets connections. With her family support, I fit become one of the biggest contractors in this state. And me?" Stella's voice was barely a whisper. "What happened to me? What happened to everything I do for you? What happened to your promise?" John finally looked at her, and what he saw in her eyes almost broke his resolve. Pure, devastated love. The love that had fed him when he was hungry, housed him when he was homeless, believed in him when the world said he was nothing. "You good woman, Stella. The best woman I know. But this is a business. This is my future." "Our future," Stella corrected, her voice breaking. "You say now our future. And John, I carry your baby."
The words hit John like a physical blow. His face went pale, and he stepped backwards as if she had struck him. "What? I pregnant, John. 2 months now. That's what I want to tell you. We go be family. Real family." The room seemed to spin around John. This he hadn't expected. This changed everything and nothing at the same time. "Stella, this thing done already decide. The wedding na next month. So wedding you want make I do? Wedding happened to your child?" John couldn't answer. He had been so focused on his dreams of success that he hadn't considered the full cost. Looking at Stella now, this woman who had given him everything, who was carrying his child, he felt something die inside him. But his ambition was stronger than his conscience. "I go take care of you," he said weakly. "I go make sure you and the baby no lack anything." Stella laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone whose world had just collapsed. "Take care of me? Like your side woman? Like your dirty secret?" Stella, no be like that. Get out. What? I say get out of this house. This houseway I pay for with my sweat. Get out. John had never seen Stella angry. In 3 years, she had never raised her voice at him, never demanded anything, and never made him feel guilty for her sacrifices. But now, her eyes blazed with a fury that scared him. Stella, make we talk about this. Leave. John grabbed his few belongings and left. As he walked away, he could hear Stella crying through the thin walls, deep, heartbroken sobs that would haunt his dreams for years to come. 1 month later, the biggest church in Tanta was decorated with white flowers and expensive fabrics. The who's who of the region were in attendance: politicians, businessmen, traditional rulers. It was the wedding of the year. John stood at the altar in an expensive suit that fit him perfectly, looking every inch the successful businessman he had become. Beside him, Linda was radiant in a wedding dress that cost more than most people in Tanta earned in a year. But John looked hollow. Despite his success, despite achieving everything he had dreamed of, something was missing. He kept glancing at the church doors, as if expecting someone who would never come. Linda noticed his distraction. "Are you all right?" she whispered. "Yes, John Leet. Just nervous." The pastor began the ceremony with prayer, praising God for bringing together 2 successful young people in holy matrimony. The congregation responded with hearty amens. "We are gathered here today to witness the union of John and Linda in holy matrimony," the pastor continued. "This is a joyous occasion, a celebration of love and commitment." But as the pastor spoke about love and commitment, John's mind wandered to a small room where a woman once cooked with her last handful of Gary just to feed him. He thought about calloused hands that had worked tirelessly for his dreams, about a gold bracelet sold to pay his fees. If anyone has any reason why these 2 should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. The pastor's words were routine, a formality. In all his years of conducting weddings, no one had ever objected. The congregation sat in comfortable silence, waiting for the ceremony to continue. That's when the church doors opened. A collective gasp rose from the congregation as Stella walked into the church. She wasn't the broken woman John had left crying in a small room a month ago. She walked with dignity, wearing her best dress, a simple but elegant blue outfit she had been saving for her own wedding day. Her pregnancy wasn't showing yet, but something had changed about her. There was a strength in her bearing, a resolve that commanded attention. Chief Obama's face darkened with anger. Linda gripped John's arm tighter. But Stella ignored them all, walking steadily down the aisle until she reached the front of the church. "I didn't come to fight," she began, her voice clear and steady, carrying to every corner of the now silent church. "I didn't come to stop this wedding. I came because some words need to be said, and they need to be said in front of everybody." The pastor looked confused, unsure whether to call security or let her speak. Chief Obama half rose from his seat, but something in Stella's demeanor made him pause. "John," she continued, looking directly at the groom. "You remember when you were sleeping under the bridge? When you had nothing? No family, no money, no hope? I was there. When you were hungry for 3 days straight and thought the world had forgotten you. I was there, giving you my food even when I had none for myself." The congregation was completely silent now, hanging on every word. "When you needed 50,000 naira for your apprentice fees. When you thought your dreams were finished, I sold my grandmother's bracelet. The only valuable thing I owned, the only memory I had of my family. I gave you everything, John. Not because I was stupid, not because I didn't have choices, but because I loved you with everything I had." Tears were flowing down several faces in the congregation. Even some of the men looked uncomfortable. "Today, you stand here marrying someone who met you when you already had something to offer. She fell in love with your success, not your struggle. She loved your potential, not your person. When you were nobody, she wouldn't have looked at you twice." Linda's face flushed red, but she couldn't deny the truth of the words. "I don't curse you, John. I don't wish you bad. But I want you to remember something. When your beautiful wife gets tired of you, when the money finishes and the connections disappear, when hard times come again, and they will come, remember the girl who loved you when you had nothing." Stella's voice rose now, filled with all the pain and love of 3 years. "Remember the girl who sold everything for your tomorrow, only to watch you give it to someone else. Remember the girl who is carrying your child right now, standing here watching you marry another woman. The revelation about the pregnancy sent another shock through the congregation. Linda's eyes widened in horror and rage. Chief Obama looked like he might have a heart attack. I gave you 3 years of my life, John. 3 years of love, sacrifice, and unwavering faith. I don't regret it, because that's what love does. It gives without counting the cost. But I want everyone here to see what kind of man you really are. I want them to know the price of your success. Stella turned to face the congregation now, her voice carrying the weight of absolute truth. Let this be a lesson to all the young women here. Love a man not for what he can become, but for who he is when he is nothing. Because when a man forgets where he came from, he will forget who brought him there. She turned back to John one last time. Congratulations on your wedding, John. I pray your wife never has to feel the pain I feel today. I pray she never has to watch the man she sacrificed everything to choose someone else because she wasn't good enough for his new status. With that, Stella turned and walked back down the aisle with the same dignity she had entered with. The church remained silent until the doors closed behind her. The wedding continued, but the joy was gone. John could barely speak his vows. Linda was visibly shaken, and Chief Obama looked like he was reconsidering his decision. The congregation whispered among themselves, and many left before the reception. What should have been the happiest day of John's life became a hollow victory, tainted by the truth Stella had spoken.
6 months after the wedding, John sat in his luxurious office in the heart of town. He had everything he had dreamed of: a successful business, a beautiful wife, connections that opened every door. But success had come with a price he was only now beginning to understand. His marriage to Linda was complicated. She was intelligent, capable, and had indeed helped his business grow exponentially. But she never let him forget that she had married beneath her status, that she could have had any man she wanted. Their relationship was more business partnership than love, and John often felt like an employee in his own marriage. "You were lucky I chose you," she would say during their frequent arguments. "Do you know how many men would give anything to be in your position?" John knew she was right, but it didn't make the words hurt less. Meanwhile, news of Stella reached him through mutual acquaintances. She had lost the baby, a miscarriage brought on by stress, the doctors said. The news hit John harder than he expected. 4 days, he couldn't work, couldn't eat, couldn't stop thinking about what he had cost them both. But Stella had not broken. Instead, she had channeled her pain into purpose. Using the skills she had learned from years of selling palm wine, she started a small business buying and selling foodstuffs. She was smart, hardworking, and honest, qualities that quickly earned her a reputation in the market. Within 6 months, she had saved enough to open a small shop. Within a year, she owned 3 shops and employed several people. She was building the life she should have had with John, but she was building it alone. John heard about her success and felt something he couldn't name. Pride mixed with regret, admiration mixed with shame. The woman he had deemed not good enough for his new status was proving that she had never needed him to be somebody. She had been somebody all along. One evening, Linda confronted him about his distraction. "You're thinking about her again, aren't you? That woman from the wedding." John couldn't deny it. "Her name is Stella. I don't care what her name is. She's your past, John. I'm your future. But what if I chose the wrong future?" The question hung between them like a blade. Linda's face went cold. "If you think you made a mistake, you're free to leave. But remember what you'll be giving up. My father's contracts sustain your business. My connections open doors for you. Without me, you're just another local contractor." John knew she was right, but the knowledge brought no comfort. He had traded love for opportunity, and now he had to live with the consequences. 2 years after the wedding, John's world began to crumble in ways he never expected. It started with a scandal. Chief Obama was arrested for corruption, his properties seized by the government. Overnight, John lost his biggest contracts and found himself blacklisted by association. The politicians who had embraced him as Chief Obama's son-in-law now avoided him like a plague. Linda, faced with the collapse of her family's empire, revealed her true nature. "I can't live like this," she announced one morning, her bags already packed. "I'm filing for divorce." "Linda, wait. We can rebuild. Together, we can. Together." She laughed bitterly. "John, I married you because I thought you were going somewhere. Without my father's protection, you're nothing. You're back to being that poor carpenter I found in my father's house. But what about our marriage vows? For better or worse? Those were just words, John. I'm not going down with your sinking ship. And she left, taking half of everything he owned and leaving him with debts he couldn't pay. Within 6 months, John had lost his business, his house, his cars. He was back where he started, only now he was older, more cynical, and completely alone. One evening, as he sat in a cheap room that reminded him painfully of his early days with Stella, there was a knock on his door. He opened it to find a young man holding an envelope. Are you John? Yes. This is for you. Inside the envelope was a check for 500,000 naira and a simple note, for the carpenter I once knew. S. John stared at the check, his hands shaking. Stella, the woman he had betrayed and humiliated, was offering him a lifeline when no one else would. She had heard about his troubles, everyone in town had, and despite everything, she still cared enough to help. He wanted to reject the money, to maintain some shred of pride, but he couldn't afford pride anymore. He needed the money to survive, to start over. But accepting it meant acknowledging that the woman he had deemed not good enough to be his wife was now successful enough to rescue him. That night, John cried for the first time since he was a child, not from hunger or hardship, but from the crushing weight of understanding what he had lost. The final truth. 1 year later, John had used Stella's money to restart his carpentry business on a much smaller scale. He worked alone now, making simple furniture for local customers. The big contracts and political connections were gone, but he was surviving. He never saw Stella, though he heard about her success regularly. She had expanded her business to include a restaurant and was considering opening a small hotel. She employed over 20 people and was known throughout the region for her fairness and generosity. One day, while delivering a wardrobe to a customer, John's car broke down near Stella's main shop. As he waited for help, he saw her through the window, discussing business with her employees. She looked older, more sophisticated, but there was a strength about her that hadn't been there before. Their eyes met through the glass, and for a moment, time stopped. Stella nodded politely, the way one acknowledges a distant acquaintance, then turned back to her work. That simple gesture hurt more than anger would have. It told John that he had become exactly what he feared most, irrelevant to the woman who had once loved him more than life itself. As his car was being repaired, one of Stella's employees, an old man who remembered their story, struck up a conversation. You know, the old man said, Madam Stella could have married anybody by now. Rich men, educated men, and men with connections. They all come asking for her hand. John felt a stab of something, jealousy, regret, he couldn't tell which. But she always says the same thing, the old man continued. I gave my heart to someone once. It nearly destroyed me. I won't make that mistake again. The old man looked at John knowingly. Some wounds heal, my son. Others just teach us to be stronger. When John's car was fixed, he drove away without speaking to Stella. But her employee's words echoed in his mind for days. He had not just lost a woman, he had destroyed her ability to love again. That was his true crime, and it was unforgivable. The end.